Day 2. We have a very good episode in store for you today because yet again, we're going to end today's episode with a massive twist, and I cannot wait. It's so juicy and I just love it. So it's going to end a bit on a cliffhanger, but it's okay because we have our finale 2 episodes coming up next week. So Friday coffee chat, then we will also have on the in-between days, there's going to be stuff going on in the Coven and the blog and the Discord and everywhere. So make sure that you're checking those out for all the giveaways. And then on Monday, we will have episode 21, which will leave you crying. I'm sure I'm going to cry when I record it. It is a heartbreaking episode, but so important to the series. And then our grand finale of Demons Forever. And this, like more than a year of readings, will conclude with episode 22 of Demons Forever live on Wednesday next week. It's hard to believe. There will be some giveaways going on throughout the next. So we're on day 2. So we've got still 11 days of giveaways after this, as well as the grand prize giveaway, of course, that will be chosen just after Halloween Day. But oh my gosh, today's episode, we have 9 pages, so I want to get to the reading pretty quickly, but I also want to get to the giveaway. So because we are on the road, it is not as easy for me to do giveaways where I package things up, and I'm so sorry for that because I really do enjoy putting my notes in there and everything else, but we're still going to do the giveaways because they're super fun, and I want you guys to have a good time and everybody get a chance to win. So I will be giving away an Archer and Olive gift card. So if you're not familiar, because you're not in the planner community, Archer and Olive is basically a notebook company, and they have some amazing notebooks. They have A5 size, which is smaller than this one. It's kind of like half of a letter size page, sort of. And then they also have this amazing B5 size. Now, this is only the second notebook I've ever had in this B5 size, but it is so nice. It's smaller than letter, but bigger than A5. This particular one has this gorgeous moon and stars on it. And what is so cool about this one, these almost all of them are dot grid. If you can see that, I don't know if that'll show up, but they're dot grid pages. But this one is called their Neapolitan, and you can see it here in the pages. So it has white paper, bright white paper, not like ivory, bright white. It has craft paper. Maybe you can see the dots there a little bit better. And it has black paper, which has like white, very small white dots. So you've got those 3 colors in here, and it's like 10 pages of each, and then it rotates like that. This is something I bought at the beginning of the year or end of last year to become my new sort of witchy bullet journal and spell journal. So my introduction to witchier things was really for myself. I'm going to be doing an extra video on this as well, but I'll just talk about it briefly. My introduction to witchy things was growing up in the woods. I grew up in nature. I grew up picking up rocks, not crystals, not, anything that was like special quartz or anything like that, but just picking up rocks that felt smooth in my hand from the river and enjoying being out in nature. I was pretty much outside all the time because I grew up in a log cabin where we had no air conditioning, which is, I understand if you don't come from Georgia, you might be like, well, we didn't have air conditioning either. But this is like South Georgia where it gets to be 100 degrees, and we had no air conditioning, and we were in a 2-story house, and my bedroom, all the bedrooms were upstairs. So it was so much cooler to be outside in the woods than it was to be in the house. And so I grew up with the snakes and the mice and the deer and the bunnies and all of the animals outside, the birds, and I loved it. And I think that that was really my witchy roots. And I actually used to run around barefoot more than I had shoes on sometimes. And I loved that. I loved being out in nature and exploring. And that is kind of my witchier roots. And some of the things that I used to love to do would be to take a journal outside into the woods and just write poetry that will never see the light of day because it was so childish, and like someday I'll fall in love and someday I'll have a great life, and these kind of things. But those were my versions of spells growing up, was writing under the canopy of the trees in the coolness of the woods and dreaming of who I would someday be. And so journaling is very important to me. And even though I am not currently living in the woods right now, maybe we will buy a witchier, woodsy house when we settle down. I do still want to reconnect with some of those roots. And one of the ways that I plan to do it is by taking this Archer and Olive journal. This is really thick pages, so you can watercolor on it, you can paint on it. If you really want to go see some great examples of like how much paint you can do on this, go check out the Plant-Based Bride, because she has some beautiful videos of how she bullet journals and paints and decorates. And you'll be able to see that like paint doesn't even bleed through these pages. They're so thick. It's such a beautiful journal. So I am going to be, one of the things we're going to do for the Spooktacular is I will be setting up my like witchy Book of Shadows spell journal. I've had it all year and just have not taken the time to do it. And I wasted. So I thought potentially like I took up or made the decision to use up some of my very precious space in our suitcases in order to bring this and all of my like pens that will write on black paper and things like that. So because I have felt the need before the end of the year to really get this set up as a place where I can write down not only poetry that means something to me, but spells, my feelings of getting back into being a woman of nature and the earth, just getting back to those roots and really starting to do more than just like manifesting and different things like that, just really like reconnect with this more spiritual side of myself. So I'm going to be setting this up as a bonus video that you guys will see later in the Spooktacular, but I'm giving one away too. So make sure you stay to the end of this video to get details on how to win a gift card to Archer and Olive. So I will give you the details at the end of this video. For now, though, we are going to dive into episode 20. And like I said, you know, we ended last week on this note, or we ended on Monday on this note of the battle is going to start tomorrow. It all begins. And Harper having this very touching moment with Jackson of like, I don't want to lose you. And he's like, you won't. Even death cannot be the loss of this that we share with each other. But are they both going to make it through? And one way or another, the world will be different, because there will either be the loss of hope forever, or they will have freed the demons. So what's going to happen? So here we go. Episode 20. Chapter 78, Not a Day for Fear. I woke with a start. Today's the day everything changes. The realization hit me like a truck. Everything had been leading us to this day, this one thing. Would we be able to set Airden free? Or would we lose him forever? Would we survive? Jackson put his hand on my arm. What is it? He asked, his voice sleepy as he sat up. I leaned against him. I don't suppose you have a drawing that shows us how this all turns out? I asked. I wish it could be that easy, he said, but we're going to have to find out as we go. I closed my eyes and took in a slow breath. I'm scared, I whispered. It wasn't the kind of thing a leader was supposed to confess, but he was the only one I could bare my soul to. He was the only one who would understand how I could be afraid and confident at the same time. Jackson kissed my shoulder and put his arms around me, his body still warm from sleep. Me too. We sat there together for a long time, watching as the sun came up outside our window. I let my fears wash over me. I faced them with honesty, raw and real, understanding that this could be the last calm moment of my life. My last chance to show any weakness. When I'd admitted them all to myself, I set my darkest fears aside. I got out of bed and settled on the floor of the bedroom, crossing my legs, palms up. I connected with the deep power inside my soul. I drew my strength into myself and held on to it with iron fists. Today was not a day for fear. Chapter 79, No Turning Back. The morning was a flurry of activity. Everyone spent their time talking through their plans, sharpening their weapons, and practicing for the battle ahead. I knew Piotrek, Lirot, and the other guards would be getting ready for battle on their side of the portal. Jackson told me they had not hesitated to volunteer for the job of protecting the ring. In fact, he said they were proud to live in service to their princess. I had no idea how I would ever repay them. I simply prayed I would someday have the chance to thank them in person. The Sullivan women took off around noon. Nature seems to be working in our favor, Eloise said. It's rainy and overcast already. All we have to do is add some heavier rain and some bad winds. It should look very natural. She lowered her head for a moment, then reached out to take my hand. My mother always told me it was an honor to be named after one of the original priestesses of the order, she said. It doesn't feel like much of an honor now. I squeezed her hand. I hadn't even thought of the connection and how similar their names were. It's not our names that determine who we are, I told her. It's the choices we make. You're nothing like Priestess Winter, and you never will be. She pulled me into an embrace, and Caroline and Meredith joined in. Just promise me you'll get out of town as fast as you can if anything goes wrong. I don't want Priestess Winter to take her anger out on you or the witches in your town. We promise, Caroline said. The three of them left together, and as I watched them go, I felt the pressure of the coming hours. Had we thrown this together too fast? I wished we'd had more time to plan, but with the demon resistance planning to assassinate over 100 primas tomorrow, we had no choice but to act now. When it was time, the rest of our large group gathered near the entrance. I stood looking over the faces of my friends. My heart beat fast, but I took a deep breath to steady my nerves. This was it. There was no turning back now. I wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans. What did you say to a group of people who were heading into battle? They might not survive. How did I thank them for all they were about to do? In the end, I said nothing. I knew there were no words strong enough to say what we all felt in our hearts. Chapter 80. I am not your enemy. The rain poured down as we reached the ritual circle. I was relieved to find that there were no witches waiting for us, no sign of Priestess Winter. The woods were quiet except for the sound of the rain on the leaves. Everyone immediately got to work on their preparations. Leah walked around the circle creating traps. I recognized her archers with their purple flames, bows drawn in anticipation. I'd faced them myself once before, what felt like a lifetime ago now. Sarra worked her way around the inside of the traps, erecting protection spells that shimmered in the light of the purple flames. I knew this would be no match for someone as powerful as Priestess Winter, but I hoped it might slow her down, her or anyone else who came to fight against us. Essex and Jackson stood near the demon statue, discussing their defensive plans. With everything under control up above, I descended the stone steps leading into the ritual room. Marianne, Courtney, and Angela sat on the floor going over the ritual chants one last time. My eyes widened. Where's Lark? Courtney shook her head. She left the village early this morning, she said. She told me she had to get something from home before the fight. I wiped the rain from my face. Without Lark, we wouldn't be able to even attempt the ritual. It had to be getting close to 3. We needed to start exactly on time for the spell to work. Where could she be? No one was supposed to leave the group. What could she possibly have needed to do back home? I ran back up the steps to look for her and stopped cold at the sight that greeted me. A gust of wind whipped violently at my wet hair. Andros stood in the center of the circle, dressed in red and black, the tip of his sword pressed against Leah's throat. I felt the color drain from my face. What the hell was he doing here? I glanced around and saw a small army of resistance fighters gathered in formation near the edge of the ritual circle. They stood at attention, their eyes trained on their leader. I knew I couldn't trust you, Andros said through clenched teeth. His eyes focused on Leah with an anger so intense it made even Leah look nervous. She stole the man you love away from you, yet you still can't end her life? I still have a day before the assassination, Leah said. Andros lifted his upper lip in a snarl. "You were never going to hurt her," he said. "I should have known that. I came here to check on you, to make sure you were going to go through with it. But here you are, working side by side with these witches. Do you even really care about our cause?" Despite the small stream of blood trickling down her neck, Leah stood her ground, not taking even a single step backwards. "Of course I care. But if we murder all those witches, how does that make us any better than the Order?" she said. "Besides, Jackson deserves a chance to try to free his brother before you would have him killed. He's our friend, for God's sake. Can't you just let them try?" Andros looked around, taking his eyes off Leah for the first time. "Who do you think gave them the diary in the first place?" he said. Is it my fault they waited so long to come back here?" "What's happened to you?" Jackson shouted, stepping into the circle toward Andros. "You used to believe in fighting for good, not evil." Andros swung his sword in Jackson's direction. "They tried to kill my little girl," he said, his eyes wild. He gripped his hair with his fist and pulled, his face contorting into an angry scream. "Why can't you realize my way is the only way? Freeing the ones who were taken is impossible. Everyone knows that. The only way we can truly fight against the Order is to kill everyone associated with them, including your precious Prima." He turned the sword at me now, the blade swinging dangerously close to my cheek. "You're one of them," he said. "Maybe not by choice, but it doesn't change the fact that you're a part of the Order." Fury surged through me. I connected to my energy and created a shield around my hand. I reached up and grasped his blade. I pulled it down away from my face. Andros's eyes narrowed and he tried to wrench it from my hold, but I wasn't giving it back. "How dare you come here and threaten me?" I said, the sky darkening as thunder clapped in the distance. "Yes, the Order tried to kill your little girl. They tried to kill me, too. We've all lost someone important to us, but that doesn't justify what you're doing. It doesn't make it right to murder innocent people." With all my strength, I pulled the sword from his hand and flung it onto the grass. "These women aren't innocent," he said. "They chose to be a part of the Order." "Some, yes, but not all of them," I said. "I never chose this for myself. Most girls who join the Order have no idea what they're getting into. They have no clue about the demons or the evil their leaders are capable of. So many witches are victims too, unable to leave the Order for fear of being killed or turned into a hunter. Would you really rather kill them than find another way?" I gathered my power in my hands, standing tall. "There is no other way," Andros said. He turned around in a circle, his hands shaking at his side. "No matter how hard or how long we fight, their numbers only grow. Don't you see? The only way to fight them is to kill them." "No," I said. "Not if killing them also means killing the innocent. Your plan means killing demons too. How do you justify that?" "You think I want to kill demons?" he shouted, pointing at himself, his expression exaggerated. "This is war, Prima. Sometimes the innocent have to die for the cause." Something about the way he called me Prima, the way his voice was drenched in judgment and hatred, started to piss me off. "I don't expect someone like you to understand," he said. "You're one of them. You're the enemy." His words were the final straw for me. As he stepped toward me, I shifted into smoke, whipping around behind him and coiling my power around his neck. I forced him to the ground. He gasped, his eyes bulging as he stared at the empty spot on the grass. I returned to human form, but kept my smoky chains around him. Not enough to cut off his air, but just enough to let him know I was in control. I leaned down and whispered in his ear. "I am not your enemy," I said. "I may be a human Prima, but I am also a demon like you. I'm innocent in this, caught between a history I can't control and a future I have to fight for every day. Don't tell me I don't understand." I released him and pushed him down to the ground. He fell against his palms, his head lowered and body shivering in the cool afternoon. "I didn't know," he said, his voice weak and trembling. He raised his eyes as I came around in front of him. "How?" "My father is a demon, the king of the South." I crouched low to meet him at his level. Can't you see? We're fighting against the same enemy here. The Order of Shadows has taken so much from all of us, but the lines between good and evil aren't as cut and dry as demon versus human, and I refuse to kill anyone there might be the slightest chance we can save. Andros's eyes filled with tears. I offered my hand to him. Fight with us, I said. Help us complete this ritual and free someone we love. He stared at my hand, his face wrinkled with doubt. Do you really think it could work? He asked. The ritual from the journal. Yes, I said, believing it with all my soul. It will work. I waited, my heart beating fast in my chest. If he didn't want to work with us, I knew we would have to fight to stop him, and we were running out of time. But slowly, he raised his hand to mine. Chapter 81, The End of It. Lark finally arrived at 10 minutes to 3. Thank God, where have you been? I asked, pulling her into a huge hug. I was worried something had happened to you. I glanced around to see if her mother had decided to join us, finally spotting Mare Chin in the center group near Leah. I sighed with relief. I'm sorry, I had some last-minute things I needed to take care of, she said. My grandmother can be very demanding. I tilted my head. Your grandmother? Is she visiting or something? You could say that, she said, her smile forced. I'll fill you in later. I eyed her. Something was off about Lark tonight. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but she was acting strange, distracted. Was she just nervous? I didn't have time to worry about it. We needed to begin the ritual exactly at 3 p.m. We had to get down there and into place before it was too late. I looked around the ritual circle one last time before descending the stairs. Across the grass, near the demon statue, Jackson's eyes met mine. I lifted my fingers to my lips in a kiss, then turned my palm toward him, sending my love through the space between us. His lips parted slightly, love and worry and hope mixed in his expression. Would I ever see him again? I wanted to run to him, to tell him one last time just how much I loved him, but he already knew. Are you ready? Sarra asked. She took my hand, her usually cheerful attitude turned gloomy and serious. The 3 of us made our way down the stairs to where Marianne, Courtney, and Angela already waited. The ritual room itself was dark without the magical orbs to light it. Only a single black candle shone in the darkness. Angela held it out to me as I passed her. The other ritual items lay on the floor by the portal stone. The chalice, the ritual dagger, the necklace. The matching blue stones glittered in the dim light, all of them chipped from the much larger stone in the middle. In the quiet chamber, I felt the energy and power of these items. They belonged together. My heart fluttered, and I had to work to keep my breathing steady. Sarra nodded to me, then took her place at the head of the 5-pointed star, a descendant of the one who created this portal 100 years ago. She leaned down and placed her hand around the hilt of the ritual dagger. She looked at me, questioning. A chill ran through my body. Mix of fear and excitement. My hand trembled as I held it out to her and nodded. Marianne, bring the chalice, Sarra said. Marianne wrapped her hands tightly around the base of the cup. She stepped forward and held it under my outstretched hand. Zara's shoulders tensed and her lips pressed tight together. With a nervous breath in and out, she placed the tip of the dagger on the tender skin of my palm. I braced myself for the pain as she sliced through my flesh in one swift movement. I winced and clenched my jaw. A blue stream of blood flowed from my hand, pouring into the ritual chalice. The blue stone embedded on the side of the cup began to glow. Now the necklace, Sarra said, nodding to Angela King. It's important to get the scene set up exactly like it would be at the end of the binding ceremony. I closed my palm, then cradled it to my chest. Angela stepped forward and secured the necklace around my throat. I lifted my hand to the stone and rubbed my fingertip across its smooth surface. Sarra secured the dagger in her belt, then carefully reached for the cup. "Take your places," she said. "We're ready." The 5 of them stepped onto the points of the pentagram drawn on the floor of the ritual room. Everyone but Sarra knelt down on the floor and placed their left hands on the small blue stone embedded in the floor. I retrieved the communication stone from my pocket and rubbed my finger over the top of it until it began to glow. I thought of Piotrek in the shadow world, Caroline Sullivan at the edge of town, Jackson up above on the ritual grounds. They each held a similar stone, which now glowed bright with my signal. Were their hands shaking like mine? With timid steps, I took my place in the center of the star, the light from my candle creating 5 flickering shadows on the wall behind us. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply. My heart thundered in my ears. I held the air inside my lungs until it burned, my body tense. After all these months of pain and frustration, after all Jackson's years of sorrow, after so many like Brooke had been forced into a life no longer their own, this would finally be the end of it. I released the breath from my body, surrendering myself to the power of the ritual. Electricity surrounded us. Anticipation, great longing. The scene was set. It was time to begin. Chapter 82. A Crack in the Bond. Cognatus ab adnexus. Sarra held the blood-filled cup high in the air as she recited the words of the original ritual backwards. I held my breath, unsure what to expect. We were in unexplored territory now, at the mercy of the ritual, at the mercy of our own hope. At first, nothing happened. My ears hummed with the silence that surrounded us. I held my body tense, waiting, terrified. What if we couldn't get the ritual to work? What if something had happened to Piotrek and he'd been unable to place the ring in the right place? What if we'd risked everything for nothing? Then, in a rush, light erupted from the portal stone. The force of it seized my body, pulling my neck backward as my feet lifted off the ground. I hovered in the air parallel to the stone floor. An invisible power bore down on my chest, and I gasped for air. A breeze swirled around the room, whipping my hair like ropes across my face. My lips parted as my head stretched back. Something deep in my veins burned, and I cried out. The ghostly body of a woman in white formed on top of mine. My ancestor, Clara, the first Peachville Prima. Marianne gasped as the room filled with the ghosts of an entire coven of women. The memory of the first day, the creation of the Peachville Gate, became visible to us. We watched the last moments of the binding as if watching a movie in reverse. I felt Clara's terror as her jaw wrenched open, the black smoke of a demon ripped from her body. Erden. Our connection burned within me. The bond boiled in my blood. Then, as the last of his essence left Clara's mouth, the necklace lifted from my chest. Erden's spirit passed through the stone, and I felt a strange distance open between us. A crack in the bond. He coiled around us, swirling wildly as he tried to break free. "It's working," I said, having to raise my voice over the force of the wind. Lark, Marianne, Angela, and Courtney stood and began to chant ancient ritual words in reverse. Marianne stepped forward, her fingers trembling as she unclasped the necklace and pulled it from me. She held it over the chalice of blood. "Moderatus compingere animus." She opened her fist and let the pendulum fall deep into the chalice. The blood bubbled up, overflowing and spilling down the side of the cup. Sarra took my wounded hand in hers. Slowly, she poured the blood onto my palm. Wide-eyed, we all watched, breathless, as the blood soaked back into the cut. Lifting the dagger from her belt, Sarra retraced the scar, gasping as it disappeared, erased from my skin as if it had never happened. Like a mirror image, the ghostly forms around us went through the original steps of the ritual from 100 years ago, only this time in exact reverse. Hope filled my heart as Erden's essence uncoiled itself from me, his bond growing more distant. Continuing to follow the steps, Sarra fell to her knees beneath the swirling black smoke. Her light blue eyes appeared white, glowing as she lifted both palms high into the air. Animas efferi accio. Erden's dark essence was sucked back into the stone, and the wind around us died suddenly. The portal's light extinguished, and the ghostly vision dropped from my sight. Whatever force held me up disappeared, and I fell. My head slammed against the portal stone with a crack, and I cried out in pain and panic. Fear gripped my heart with its tight fist as blood trickled down my neck. What happened? This couldn't be right. I struggled to sit up, a scream lodged in my throat. Angela rushed to my side. Why did it stop? Is it over? I don't know, Sarra said. Panic filled her voice. Maybe I did something wrong. A rumbling above caught my attention. Shh, I said, lifting my eyes to the ceiling as bits of earth and dirt fell around us. What was that? Marianne asked. Shouts rang out in the clearing above, and adrenaline shot through me like a lightning bolt. They're here, I said, holding my hand out to her. Help me up, quick. I stood and ran toward the stairs, but an invisible power pushed past me. Before I could reach the top, an onyx barrier rose up, closing off the exit. I'd seen a barrier like this before when the Tiger Witch used it to lock me out of the domed city. Dark magic. The candle went out, plunging us into complete darkness. We'd been sealed inside, the ritual room, silent and dark as a tomb. A stream of light from below raced toward us, its beam separating into 4 points. With a popping sound, the points exploded as they barreled into the chest of the girl standing behind me on the stairs. Marianne, Sarra, Courtney, Angela, all frozen in time, their mouths open in various stages of a scream, their bodies still like statues. Something skittered through the darkness below. I swallowed, my throat thick with fear. Someone was down here with us, but how? Where had they come from? How did we miss that? I stretched my hand out and formed a small orb of light, then sent it down into the heart of the room. There, at the bottom of the stairs, surrounded by 5 scorpion monsters, stood Lark. She wore a strange smile on her face, her dark eyes watching me carefully. My first instinct was to rush down to her to warn her, but something in those eyes stopped me cold. They held no fear. Lark, I asked, my tone uncertain. She sighed and shook her head. This is the part I've been dreading, she said. She glanced at the monsters next to her. I never wanted to hurt you, Harper. Why couldn't you have just cooperated with the order? Things would have turned out so much better for all of us. Her words took my breath away. The room began to spin and my knees went weak. I couldn't seem to make sense of what was happening. I really didn't want to have to be the one to do this, she said. My grandmother told me I didn't have a choice. I don't understand, I said, shaking my head. I took a few steps forward, holding on to the wall beside me for support. Maybe this will help, she said. She spun around, her body shrinking to a tiny blue butterfly. I fell to my knees on the hard stone steps, her betrayal piercing my heart. I brought my hands up to my head, the truth coming in waves. Anyone could be anyone. An image of the blue butterfly tattoo on her back flashed into my mind, and I opened my eyes. She fluttered around me, then reformed on the steps by my side. You're one of them? I asked. You're a Winter? But how? Lark giggled. I know it's hard to believe, she said. My mother and I don't look a thing like them, but that's because of the glamour. I would drop it, but it's permanent. The real Chen family had to be sacrificed years ago, of course, but it couldn't be helped. Grandmother needed a spy on the inside, someone about the same age as the future Prima, just in case you ever came home. Someone who could gain your trust, teach you special skills to make you think we were friends. The glamours, I said. Lark stood and walked back down to where the scorpions waited. My job was to seduce you with your own power and with the idea of acceptance and friendship. I can't believe I trusted you, I said, anger and sadness twisting in my stomach. I should have seen the signs, the butterfly tattoo, the insane amount of security at your house, the fact that you know spells none of the other girls knew. Don't be too hard on yourself, she said with a frown. I can be a very good actress. I learned it from my mother. All seconds are trained in the art of deception from the day they are born. Seconds? My eyes widened. Your mother was a second. She nodded. Yes, she said. All seconds are eventually placed as spies in Demon Gate towns. That's why no one can remember them. Seconds become someone else. The priestess has eyes everywhere. Everything was finally becoming clear. No wonder Sarra never knew where the seconds were taken. They weren't being sacrificed. They were becoming a part of some evil network of spies, sending information to the priestess about each individual coven. That must have been how Priestess Winter knew about gates like Aldine, gates where the witches had begun to protest the slavery of demons. A loud rumbling above sent more debris raining down on us. Lark looked up. I'm afraid I don't have any more time to talk, she said. Grandmother is expecting me to deliver you to her soon so we can end this once and for all. With a snap of her wrist, she sent a stream of light toward me. It was exactly like the one she'd frozen the other girls with, but I was too fast for her. I shifted into white smoke and flew down to the back of the room, disappearing into the shadows. Lark cursed and whipped around, her black eyes searching for me. She formed a bright orb in her palm, then commanded the scorpions to find me. I had to think fast. It had taken everything Jackson and I had to fight just one of these things. Luckily, I already knew their greatest weakness. I reached inside my core and dragged my power to the surface. Flames danced across my fingertips as the scorpions skittered toward me. With a fierce cry, I fueled the white-hot fire with my pain. I had trusted her, loved her, and all along her friendship had been a lie. Tears streamed down my face, but rage burned in my heart. I sent the fire out in a circle around my body, burning the scorpion's shells to a crisp until their green blood boiled within. The sounds of their final screams mirrored the agony I felt inside. When the scorpions were dead, I turned to Lark. I would mourn our friendship later, but now I would have my revenge. Dun, dun, dun. Woo! Okay, so let me know if you saw that coming or not. Obviously, when she says something, you know something's up when she's not there. And you know something's up when she says that her grandmother can be very demanding. It's like, wait, but how does that compute? How does that make any sense? But yes, so that was one of those twists that I kind of it seems like I set it up from the very beginning because we know about Lark's butterfly tattoo on her back before we know anything about Sarra or the Winter family. So we see that butterfly tattoo in the very first book when they're at that sleepover, which is one of those things that I tried to do for this book. And, this was my 6th published novel. And by this time, after a couple of years of writing professionally, I was really trying to increase my plants and reveals. And I was trying to do something similar to what I'm doing as I'm working on book 12, which is going back to mine the previous books for things that were planted that need to come full circle here towards the end, and really trying to make sure that if something was going to be important, I had an echo of it. So like a reminder. So when we have Harper go back to Brooke's house and she sees that living room and she's thinking fondly about that first sleepover, that is a mirror to this moment when she sees the tattoo. She remembers the tattoo because that was the night she saw that tattoo. And this is before she even understood that the tattoos on the back she thought she saw it moving. And it's like, what is that? And of course, the second book, the beginning of the second book, is Harper getting her own tattoo. And so that tattoo, it was something I didn't know that this would all come full circle in book 6, that blue tattoo, butterfly tattoo would play into this. But it was just one of those things where I was struggling to finish this book, and I knew that there were some things that needed to come together. And George, who I love, who is my perfect person, said to me, let's just take off for the weekend and go to Myrtle Beach, and we'll take your index cards and we'll just put them all over the hotel room. So Andrew, at this point, when I was working through the plot of this, was only like 3 months old. And so we had him like when he was napping or in the little baby carrier. Like I have memories of George wearing Andrew in the baby Bjorn and kind of like, bouncing him around and walking around the room as we talked through some of the potential things that were going to happen in this plot, and me putting out those index cards and trying to figure it out. And when I said something about the blue butterfly, it was just like, it was literally almost like the idea went like that to me and like knocked me on my back, because I was like, oh my God, Lark and her mother's a second, and this is what happens to the seconds. And it was like almost as if the story did not come from me. It came from some outside place, and I was just tapping into it in some way, which I know sounds very strange, but it was like that was how it was always meant to be. And some part of me knew that all the way years before, when I had written that first book, that this would come full circle, and how it did, for sure. So Lark and her mother and her whole family have done the same thing that happened with Lydia Ashworth. They took over someone else's existence, basically, and they became the Chins, and no one would suspect. And so now we know that almost every Demon Gate town has somebody, some of the bigger gates have these spies everywhere from these years of seconds being sent out to live there. And so there are lots of little, Easter eggs and things to discover throughout this series. But I hope that one was a surprise to many of you and fun to listen to. So on Monday next week, we will move into the final 2 episodes. So episode 21 will be another premiere. It is obviously moving into the battle stuff here, and there are some hard things happening in this. And I am nervous to read it because I know it's going to make me cry, but it's going to be okay. We will get through it together. As far as the giveaway for today, so I am not physically giving away an Archer and Olive bullet journal. I am giving away a $50 gift card to Archer and Olive. That should be enough to get you a new notebook. These are about $35, and then hopefully maybe a pen or 2 of the acrylograph pens. They have some paint pens that work really great on there, or maybe you can grab 2 notebooks if you get a sale or get something like that. So $50 to Archer and Olive, and there are tons of other giveaways going on. This one is maybe one of the bigger ones, but there are lots of other smaller ones going on, as well as goodies for everybody. Even if you don't win something, everybody gets something digital for free. So make sure that you've checked out my blog at sarahcannon.com and click the blog tab there. And I will see you guys around the internet. I hope you enjoyed this episode and this entire book. Honestly, I will see you guys Friday for our coffee chat. And then we will do Monday, we will start back with our final 2 episodes. The following Saturday, which is October 30th, is that right? The following Saturday, we are going to do a Netflix teleparty. So this will only be available to people who have a Netflix subscription. So if you don't have one, I'm sorry that you won't be able to join us. But if you do have a Netflix subscription, you'll be able to join us on teleparty. So everybody who joins has to have their own Netflix sign in and subscription, but then you will get a party invite and you'll be able to join us. And what I will be able to do as the leaders, I'll be able to talk to you through my headphones, and there will be chat on the side, and we're going to watch a movie together. I will be revealing which movie we're going to watch later next week, so stay tuned for that. But if you can save the date next Saturday, October 30th for that, I'll be announcing a time coming up soon. So more info on that tomorrow, or more info on that on Friday during the coffee chat. So I will see you guys then. All right. Happy reading. Bye, everybody.